underneath everything else in this park, underneath all of the stuff that the casual tourists come to engage in, there's something true and real. My God.
Hi, Dad.
What's going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here with a WestWorld video for you. If you've not subscribed, make sure to do so now, but we're going to jump right into this one. The whole point of this video is to make WestWorld a little bit less complex. WestWorld has a reputation for being complex, and I think it actually does it a disservice. Now, it's definitely an intelligent television show and does lend itself to a variety of different fields, but the Nolans want you to get lost. Both Joy and Nolan want you to get lost in all the bells and whistles of artificial intelligence and advanced technologies. But really, at heart, the questions that WestWorld poses will never be answered through the tech of WestWorld. Co-creator Lisa Joy has stated this herself. When it comes down to it, WestWorld is just a show about being human. In fact, you could make WestWorld without the West, without the robots, without any of the tech, because WestWorld is essentially a show about the disenfranchised, those on the margins of society, those who are thrown away, those who are objectified. It is a show about simply what it means to be human. You can look at a few different works of Nolan and do the same thing. One example is you could take Dark Knight, and you could simply make that a detective story. It doesn't need to be Batman, and you still could get the same story. So, for example, understanding the Bat Tech or the Batmobile or the tools that are on the Bat Belt, obviously you're not going to understand anything further about Batman. Another great example of a piece of the Nolan's work is Inception. Inception is a perfect example since it is admittedly a complex narrative, but still, understanding the technology in which they use does not get you any closer to understanding what the movie is trying to tell you, what it's trying to convey. Inception's greatest puzzler is its final scene, in which DiCaprio's Dominic Cobb successfully reunites with his children against seemingly impossible odds after pulling off an elaborate Inception heist to convince a businessman to break up his father's late corporation. Earlier in the film, Nolan has established the idea of a personal totem. In Cobb's case, it's a spinning top. Now, this can help establish if one is experiencing a dream or reality. If the top continues to spin indefinitely, the owner is most likely stuck in somebody else's dreamscape. If it drops, they're in the real world. Just using Inception as one of many examples we could use. What if you just tried to understand Inception by breaking down how they enter these sub-realms of reality? If you just scrutinized every bit of it and you tried to go into it and you framed your whole theory and you framed the whole narrative of the story around the tech. Tech in Inception, just like in WestWorld, doesn't matter. You would just be like that spinning top. These are tools that they use to tell their story. They are the story. It's a common misconception. Again, Inception, The Dark Knight, WestWorld, all great stories are about the characters, not about the scenario. You can strip all the bells and whistles away from WestWorld and still have WestWorld. And more importantly, get across the philosophical questions that the show is asking you. From the show side, the tech in WestWorld is definitely depicted in a way that is as relevant and as accurate as it can possibly be. They bring in specialists to handle the tech that they're trying to use in the show. Now, that should tell you something right there. Joy and Nolan are not experts in these areas. They don't write about this. This is a clear indication that this is a tool for them to tell their story that they know. They don't know anything about this, so they bring in specialists. You don't bring in specialists to tell your whole story. Again, they're just tools. This is actually almost a narrative within WestWorld. The Man in Black spends all of season 1 chasing the maze, which just turns out to be essentially a way for the actual series itself to frame the process of achieving sentience, which the series does make sure to let us know that sentience itself is subjective and doesn't actually exist. It's something we ourselves made up. But as a show, they have to frame a way for people to actually achieve this. Some people have walked away thinking that there is a defined way to actually achieve something that actually isn't even real. I think people are finally coming around to the idea that all of this is subjective, and knowing that the show is not building barriers. All these social constructs and divides are being demolished, not built. So the maze is a children's toy. The second season is known as The Door. since this whole scenario does revolve around the narrative in which Ford did set up, and this is set up for the Man in Black, we need to look at the Man in Black's way of thinking. We need to look at what he is trying to achieve and what the story is trying to achieve. And I think that we will find a far less complex answer. The maze wasn't for the Man in Black for a reason, but the door is. I like to go by a simple line from Dr. Ford in season 1.
If you're looking for the moral of the story, quite simply ask.
We are going to put forth our best effort to simply ask.
Question for you is, what next? Have you achieved all you wanted?
Folly of my kind. There's always a yearning for more.
What I've always appreciated about you, you never rested on your laurels. You've made it to the center of all of space. But now, you're in my game. In this game, you have to make it back out. In this game, you must find the door. Congratulations, William. This game is meant for you.
We just saw an embodiment of Ford giving the initial instructions that we get in season 2, episode 1 for the door, the game that the Man in Black is playing. We later also find out in a clip that we'll put up, only one playing this game. The hosts are playing this game, which is going to lead me to my next point.
These tracks are supposed to head north, not west. Seems like Ford's game has multiple contenders. Best detours through.
We have to realize how detrimental it is that he is looking at this as a game in the first place, and he has been continuing on with this method for his whole life. Probably took what he learned in the park the first time and how he overcame Logan, gamed Delos, and became very successful. Obviously, Logan didn't fare so well in life. He's found success through gaming the system. But as we see with James Delos, who tries to game life and game death, cheat death, that it isn't going to be a long-term solution for things. So a great place to start off, and something that has been foreshadowed since episode 1 of season 1, is the connection to this story in, yes, some philosophy. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is not only foreshadowed with the dragging of multiple characters, like I said, all the way from the first scene of episode 1, season 1, to this season, literally dragging those who are not enlightened into the light. Now, the Allegory of the Cave looks at the same questions that WestWorld is asking. What is the meaning of life? What is life? What does it mean to be human? What is knowledge? And so forth. So if you look at these questions, you might try to initially explain them figuratively, explaining existence as a journey down a road, a climb up a mountain, a swim across an ocean, or in this case, a game, a window of opportunity per se, or in some cases, an all too short flicker of flame. About 2,400 years ago, one of life's most famous thinkers, Plato, said life is like being chained up in a cave, forced to watch shadows flitting across a stone wall. This is all found in Book 7 of Plato's Republic. This was the Greek philosopher's envisionment of a perfect society. He examines concepts like justice, truth, and beauty. In the allegory, a group of prisoners have been confined in a cave ever since birth. They have no knowledge of the outside world. They're all chained facing a wall, unable to turn their heads. With a fire behind them that gives off a faint light. Occasionally, people pass by their fire, carrying figures of animals and other objects that cast a shadow on the wall. The prisoners, of course, name and classify these illusions being all they know, and they have every reason to believe they're perceiving actual entities. Then suddenly, one prisoner is freed and brought outside for the first time. The sunlight hurts his eyes, and he finds the new environment disorienting. When told the things around him are real, while shadows were mere reflections, he cannot believe it. Much like Dolores looking at the stars when we see her in outside world.
It looks like the stars have been scattered across the ground. Have you ever seen anything so full of splendor?
The shadows appeared much clearer to him, but gradually his eyes will adjust. And then he comes to be able to look at objects directly through the reflections in water. And then finally, concluding with being able to look directly at the sun, the source of everything that he's ever seen. And then the prisoner returns to the cave to share his discovery, but he's no longer used to the darkness. so he has a hard time seeing the shadows on the wall. This leaves the other prisoners to think the journey has made him stupid and blind, not enlightened, and they violently resist any attempts to free them. See, Plato, ever so modestly, presents this as an analogy of what it's like to be a philosopher trying to educate the public. He states most people are just not comfortable in their ignorance, but they're actually hostile to anyone that points this out. You see, the real-life Socrates, who Plato was a student of, was sentenced to death by the Athenian government for disrupting the social order, teaching, enlightening. So Plato spends most of the Republic, most of the volumes are dedicated to disparaging the Athenian democracy. But if you can read past all of Plato's agendas, it actually connects to his other dialogues, known as the theory of the forms. These hold that, like the shadows on the wall, things even in the physical world are flawed reflections of an ideal form, such as roundness or beauty. This leads to many fundamental questions, and this does include the origin of knowledge and the nature of reality itself. For theologians, the ideal forms exist in the minds of a creator. This theory illustrates the problem of grouping concrete things under abstract terms. And then others will even wonder if we can really know that the things outside the cave are more real than the shadows, questioning reality itself. In the allegory, there's a few different interpretations and a few different circumstances in which the one prisoner is released, and the famous one is the dragging of the prisoner out, the one that refuses to leave the comfort. And that is what we see, not just only with the humans dragging the host, with the man in black, or Arnold dragging the host out, but we also see now with Bernard being drugged by Clementine, literally, physically, but it's also dragging him into an enlightenment with the subversion of the trope by going into the cave for knowledge. So we see this on all levels. We see Dolores dragging the man in black and throwing him back into the light. You see, this is questioning the validity of the realities of both human and host. It brings up an issue of, can we go about our lives being confident in what we know? It's suggested that one day a glimmer of light can punch a hole in your most basis assumption. Will you break free and struggle towards the light, even if it costs you your friends and your family? Or stick with comfortable and familiar illusions? It's truth or habit, light or shadows. There's no saying which one is better. For instance, Maeve is obviously chasing the shadow, if you're using this analogy, by looking for her daughter not caring. What about the enlightenment? Is she missing out on it because she is chasing after what would be considered a shadow in this analogy? Or does the existence of her love make her daughter real, bring her out from the shadows?
I killed her and her daughter, and then something miraculous happened. In all my years coming here, I'd never seen anything like it.
Are you able to adapt, meaning learn new things, accept new things? Are you going to stick to the abstract grouping of concrete things? It doesn't really work. Usually all that will do is further empower you. The grouping is advantageous for us to be sentient beings, a term we named and we claimed to put ourselves on the top of the list. So what I'm going to propose that the door is going to be a combination of a Native American symbol that I found that was a influence, if not an exact copy of the actual maze used in season 1, and why it still pertains, why we're still seeing it visually in season 2, because it is still in play. Now, the maze was not for the MIB, but the door is. Now, I'm proposing the door is at the center of the maze, and it is explained here that the man in the maze symbol depicts the path of life and all it entails, such as happiness, sadness, successes, and etc. The man in the maze design symbolizes experiences and choices we make in our journey through life. The center of life symbol is your goal in life. There is a dream at the center, the valley beyond, glory, so forth. And you reach the dream when you get to the middle of the maze. Upon reaching the center of the maze, you have one final opportunity, one last turn in the symbol, to look back at your choices and path before the sun god greets you, blesses you, and passes you on to the next world. So what I'm proposing is the man in black is going to have to literally pick death in order to choose life. And this gets a little bit more exciting and a little bit more tinfoily to a point when I add in what I'm about to add in, a wonderful theory by Vanessa Cole, one of the head writers from WestWorld Watchers, who I got permission to use her theory, in which I really, really like. She writes, this is a heavily, when she's writing about the riddle of Sphinx, she writes, this is a heavily William-centric episode. All the storylines tie back to him in some way. We see the failure in bloody aftermath of his experiment with James Delos, William's daughter trying to make her way to him, or his secret project, perhaps both, in the continuation of his journey to rectify his greatest mistake and possibly redemption in the process. But what is his greatest mistake? Is it only the attempt to transfer James's consciousness into a host, or do they have experiments with other test subjects in progress? There may be others awaiting the same treatment, as their human bodies are dying or possibly already dead in some cases. Maybe the location William and Dolores are both seeking is full of cloned humans in host form, in limbo until the nicks are resolved and they can be united with their downloaded selves. What better weapon could Dolores hope to find? She could simply transfer her chosen host control units into these human copies. They could make their way to freedom undetected while discarding the unneeded host bodies, say in a flood perhaps. That begs the question though, what makes you you? Is it your physical form, your memories, your personality, or both? Or is it something greater than the sum of those parts? Something intangible and impossible to duplicate completely. If Dolores and her followers succeed in transferring themselves to new physical forms, would they be able to move on as normal, or would be a disconnect between the bodies and minds? On that note, who is the human Ford downloaded? And were they united into their host body before his death? One intriguing possibility is Arnold, which would explain why Bernard is acting so strangely when we see him on the beach missing his scar. Vanessa finds it difficult to believe Ford would have been able to map his consciousness 35 plus years ago. If not him, perhaps Ford mapped his own for transfer to a new body, but that would render his sacrifice in speech to the board meaningless. A strong possibility is William, who very likely did map his own consciousness in anticipation of a successful result with the James Delos trial. It would give extra weight to his remark to James that the world may be better off without him, meaning he hadn't decided not to attempt transferring himself. But what if Ford did? If the game ends where William began, maybe William will be forced to confront his younger host self and make the choice: live forever, at least in a version of himself, or destroy his attempt at immortality and let it be a new God walk, allowing the host to take their world from unworthy humans. Now, I really like aspects of this, and I don't like thinking that the William we're seeing is a host. I don't believe that whatsoever, and it does not fit the narrative. What I believe is, first off, in order to fully live, you have to, as the Man in Black has been saying so many times, there's truth in death. Now, to live, you have to die by definition. There is no life without death. It's not living if you try to escape death. He is all about stakes. There are no stakes if you never die. So I do think it fits in a quite literal way for him to have to choose not only host or human, but, life or death. This is why Ford keeps telling him that he has to stop looking forward, because using the story behind the old Native American symbol, the last turn is for you to stop before you go through that door and look back. That's where the Man in Black is. He didn't need to go through the maze like the host did. That was just a way for them to, as in the Allegory of the Cave, stop from going insane, stop from going blind. Like they said, that the slightest hole in your reality can drive a being insane, or that can bring enlightenment. Always finding the light is not, as we've seen with both hosts in Human, with the James Delos project now, that the accepting of your own circumstances will literally do anything to avoid pain, to avoid the truth, shadow or light, truth or habit. I like Vanessa's theory here. I like a lot about it. It gives the host choice. It gives the hosts a way out. The most interesting thing about WestWorld is not how you frame how they get sentience, since it is subjective and it's something that really doesn't exist. It's something we made up. Again, the decisions that you make once you can make your own decisions is what's interesting, at least to me. So putting these decisions on the table is what I want to get to. This is where the series can really take off once we see what the hosts decide to do in the breaking down of these barriers, and once we stop grouping as they say, in these abstract ways, as we've done. In Vanessa's, what she's proposing here, to have William, especially a scene with Ed Harris and Jimmy Simpson, it would make sense that William, being somebody that he has to make everything tangible, he has to make everything something he can almost reach out and touch. It's the way he's always been. If you notice, there is a correlation between what the Ghost Nation says to Stubbs, oddly enough, I still don't know completely what to make of it, and what the Man in Black says to Teddy as he's describing his life. I'll put it up on the screen.
You live only as long as the last person who remembers you.
Last year, my wife took the wrong pills. Fell asleep in the bath. Tragic accident. 30 years of marriage vanished.
Then he can literally see or touch. He feels as if it's all gone. William has always been like this. So again, I don't know exactly where Ghost Nation plays into it all yet, but I really like the idea of him facing off against his own immortality and him trying to decide if he is going to pick host or human, life or death. I think that it doesn't have to be something that is so overcomplicated.
I might not remember, but I know who you are, William. One good deed doesn't change that.
Who said anything about a good deed? You wanted me to play your game. I'm gonna play it to the bone.
And you still don't understand the real game we're playing here. If you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction.
About who we are. It's journey inward, not outward. Thank you guys. I'm Justin Thomas. Make sure to subscribe. And if you want to tune in Sunday right after the show for Before the Dust Settles, and that is our live stream that we do right after the show. And also before the show, I'll be joining In Deep Geek for a pre-show stream on his channel at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I will put the links in the information below, along with Vanessa Cole's WestWorld Watcher articles and her wonderful art that she does, the website where you can purchase some awesome portraits of some of your favorite characters from both Game of Thrones, WestWorld, and even more. Brilliant artists and great writer. Thank you, Vanessa, for letting me use your theory, and I will see you guys soon.
Hi, Dad.